often think that heartbreaks only come out of romantic relationships. We never think about that employer who did not appraise you well. We never think about that parent who bailed out on you. We never think about the very same words we speak to ourselves, but we don't honor them. A friend of mine recently told me that self-discipline, where you commit to what you've said, is an act of self-love. I learned that the hard way. On 18th of December, I woke up as fit as fiddle. Of course, I'm a marketer, and I was a journalist by that time, working for a leading radio station in this country. And I was just happy, of course, but 3 months down the line, 3 months before, I'd actually gone through, I think, a life-wrecking heartbreak. But then that day, I woke up just feeling funny. I'd had a bit of nightmares and insomnia, and it was people chasing me with daggers, and I was falling into deep holes, and I was waking up on my bed sweaty. I thought the devil had actually moved from his base in hell and had come and sat on my bedroom. And when I woke up, I wondered what the hell is going on. And the only way I could find out whether I was okay or not, because I was starting to question my sanity, was to go and see a psychiatrist. Now, that day I walk to Nairobi Hospital, and I go and look for psychiatrists. Luckily or unluckily, these people had actually closed for the holiday season. And something in my heart told me to go to the nearest hospital, which is the Upper Hill Medical Center, just to see if I could find a psychiatrist there. So I rush and I go to the directory, and I scan and I scan, and I see a psychiatrist on the 3rd floor, and I bolt up the stairs, impatient with the lift, and I go and I find a line, and I find a psychiatrist, and I find Dr. Njenga sitting down, and then he welcomes me, and then we start to talk. Asks me questions about my childhood, asks me questions about how I react to stuff. And then he writes notes, takes me to a psychologist, they do a test, and eventually they tell me that we think we may know what's up with you. But because there may be an underlying issue, let us take you somewhere where you can chill so that we examine whether there is an underlying issue. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how I ended up in a psychiatrist hospital on the 19th of December in 2018. But the good news is that for the many years I've lived on this earth, I think I'm not young, neither am I too old, but I think I've had experiences, some life-changing. But that is the one thing, the very same place that I found myself. Let me tell you a little story. One day, I was born in the village, in a midwife's home. And my mom tells me that we were trapped by the umbilical cord for about eight hours, and my life was risked. And so when I grew up in that village, my mom told me that she felt like there was something different about me from the very first time I was actually, born. But I grew up in a place called Kano Plains. How many of us here, by show of hands, know anything about Kano Plains? It's about floods, it's about mosquitoes, it's about that lady who says, Serikali's idea. That's where I grew up. And to go to the primary school I went to, we had to actually swim across River Nyando when it had broken its bank. Of course, we would walk and carry our books on our head and carry our clothes on our heads, but we still were determined that we wanted to succeed in education. And so in the village, life was extremely nice. Of course, I'd come to Nairobi to come and visit my father, who had actually married a second wife. And the reason why I went to the village was because, of course, like men with new toys, the second wife was the favorite, and my mom had to be taken to the village. But then at class 8, I find out that men used to do a trip down to our local market. And so I followed this man. And of course, I discovered that actually they were vibing mamas and ladies, really. And I tried to find out what's up, what's going on here. Of course, you're a teenager, and I fall in love with the most amazing girl in that village. She went to a boarding primary school. Her folks were abroad. She wore shoes. She was beautiful. I was the direct opposite of her. I walked barefoot, came from a poor home. I had a tattered self-esteem, and I didn't think I was handsome. But this girl knew my name, and that meant everything. One day she called me, and I felt like the world was stopping right there. And I fall in love. Of course, she goes to a national high school. I go to a local secondary school there. And so we start to talk and talk and talk and talk. But just like Doctor said, sometimes when we talk about poverty, we do not know the impact of poverty, because I could not respond to simple letters that she wrote. I could not respond to simple letters. I tried to erase the stamp using what we used to do in high school, glue and whatever, but none of my letters ever reached her. And one day, she stopped talking to me when I was in Form 2. And the rumor that went around was that the reason why she stopped talking to me was that she came home and my cassava could not rise up to the occasion. That Odongo, the son of Kano, could not rise up to the occasion. Imagine growing up in a poor home where we missed meals, where we walked to school, sometimes swam across rivers. The last straw you had, which was called your esteem, is taken to the slaughter, and they do the most radical surgery on it without anesthesia. Was done to me, and I lost my esteem. And that is how I started the next 10 years of my life. The next 10 years of my life was to prove that I was a man. I got a girl, did what was needed to do to prove that I was standing, I had a standing ovation, did all that, and pretty much hurt myself in the process. But the point is that sometimes we imagine that the world will be broken by a nuclear weapon, or we imagine that a meteor may fall from the skies to come and annihilate human. Or sometimes we talk about aliens. But as I came to learn that the most potent weapon that can destroy this world is a person who has not healed, a person who has not processed their trauma, a person who has not processed that pain they went through. And sometimes we go along and hurt people. When I was in that leading university talked about in this country communication, I fell in love with the most amazing woman. She was, I think, everything I ever wanted. Cum laude, beautiful, natural hair, everything I wanted. We would talk, and she loved history. I love history, of course. But I did not know that the seeds of pain that were planted over 10 years ago would come and haunt me. And I hurt that girl in ways I personally still apologize to her till today for almost 6 years later. In fact, it's recently that I forgave myself because I hurt that girl badly. Then the next one I came in, of course, I was trying to prove that I could stay and I could become a better man. And so I met my match who tackled me properly, who tackled me a good one. How did I end up in a mental health hospital? In October of 2018, I was sitting on my couch in Ruaka. 11 p.m., I received a message on WhatsApp. Checking out, it was my ex who had texted me. In that message, she said something that I cannot say. But all I remember is that I bolted from that seat and rushed to the toilet. And for the next minute, I did not know that my bowel could contain all that it contained. And when I came back, it was the second round I went, and it was still more. Like I was saying, stop the water, do not flow anymore. But it was just still coming and coming until 2 a.m. And I took my laptop and I wrote a 1,800 letter word written, "Where do broken hearts go to?" And I sent it to her at 4 a.m. That marked the beginning of my sleepless nights. I never slept until the first time I went to Chiromolen Medical Center, Bustani. That's when I had my first good night's sleep. And that's how I was diagnosed with ADHD, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. I was a journalist and I covered the 2017 elections, and that's how I got all that. And when I left the hospital on the 24th of December, I have never felt free, healed, clear like that ever in my life. And I took a sabbatical from work that I used to do, and I started a journey of healing. And I went to Ukunda, and I sat by myself for many days, asking myself, why am I like this? Why am I the way I am? And after 4 months of traveling, I even went to Tanzania, where my grandfather moved in 1958 to go and work in a mine, just to try to trace the history of my family, because I felt like there was something about our family that wasn't adding up. There was brilliance, and there was just this thing. My great-grandfather was a colonial chief in Kisumu, and so I felt like this thing wasn't manifesting. And that's how I put a pulse on what I think many of us here need to think about. How many of us here have sat down by yourself to ask yourself how the environment you grew up in affected you? How many of us here have asked the question about the first relationship that you had and how it's affecting your marriage right now? How many of us have thought about the worldviews we hold on parenting, on money, on where to go, why we're driven or not? All these things. Have we ever asked ourselves a question, where are they coming from? If we checked your career and the looks and all those things perhaps that you consider important, who are you? And I want to put to you today, ladies and gentlemen, that the best thing that we can do to this world by changing this world is to heal the individual. A healed individual will heal a home. A healed home will heal a community. A healed community will heal a country. And when we do that, we're going to be more patient, we're going to have more love, we're going to be more compassionate, we're going to have more empathy. That is what the world needs. And as we speak right now, together with a group of our friends, we are working on a plan to try to give as many therapy sessions as possible. Right now, we're working with human rights defenders, people who are documenting extrajudicial executions in slums across the country, people who are overwhelmed, fighting evil, but they themselves are victims of that system. And when you meet them after 3, 4, 5 sessions, light up, brilliant and great, you say that perhaps we may need to decide in this country that therapy is a basic right. And therefore, I want to urge you all that if you never ever do anything else for this country, perhaps you don't have any innovation, or perhaps you don't invest, or perhaps you don't do all that. The best thing you can do for yourself is to heal. And my book is available for sales. Today is end month. You're going to buy them when this meeting is over so that it can help you to also start your discovery journey. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.